This is one of those golf moments that still makes people tilt their head and go, wait, how did that even happen? Because we're not talking about some random journeyman misreading a rule. We're talking about Tiger Woods, the guy who practically carried a rule book in his back pocket. By the early 2000s, Tiger wasn't just dominant. He was obsessive about doing things the right way. He'd call penalties on himself that nobody else saw. He'd stop mid-round to clarify rulings. Other players worried about accidentally crossing a line. Tiger built his brand on never even approaching it. So when the news hit that he'd been disqualified at Augusta, of all places, it felt surreal. The 2013 Masters wasn't just another tournament. It was Augusta National, golf's cathedral, where every blade of grass feels sacred. Tiger was trying to claw his way back to full dominance after injuries and personal chaos. And for most of that week, he looked locked in. Then on the par 5 15th in the second round, his approach shot clipped the flagstick and ricocheted into the water. Bad luck? Sure, but not scandal. The real issue came after. Tiger dropped the ball and continued without incident. No official stopped him. No sirens went off. He finished the round. He even explained afterward that he had intentionally dropped a couple yards behind his original spot to get a more comfortable number. That one casual comment is what lit the fuse, because under the rules at the time, he was required to drop as close as possible to the original position. By admitting he deliberately altered the spot, Tiger unintentionally confessed to signing an incorrect scorecard. And in golf, that's the nuclear offense. What made it sting wasn't just the technicality, it was the timing and the optics. A viewer had called in to question the drop. Officials had reviewed it, initially decided no further action was needed, and only later reversed course. Tiger was assessed a 2-stroke penalty but allowed to continue under Rule 33-7, avoiding disqualification. To some, that looked like preferential treatment. To others, it looked like a bureaucratic mess. Either way, the clean, ruthless enforcer of golf's code suddenly found himself in the middle of one of the most awkward rules controversies in Masters history. Not because he tried to cheat, but because he tried to be precise and explained himself too honestly. And that's why the whole thing still feels weird. Tiger Woods, of all people, undone not by arrogance, but by inches. Even though Augusta chose not to officially disqualify him, the damage to Tiger Woods' image was already done. Because the controversy wasn't just about a 2-stroke penalty, it was about perception. When Tiger calmly admitted in his post-round interview that he intentionally dropped the ball a couple of yards farther back to change his yardage, he wasn't trying to cheat, he was simply explaining his thought process. But that honesty exposed a technical rules violation. Under the rules at the time, he was required to drop as close as possible to the original spot, and by acknowledging he deliberately adjusted the distance, then signing an incorrect scorecard, he created grounds for disqualification. Augusta's committee invoked Rule 337 and reduced it to a 2-stroke penalty because officials had reviewed the drop earlier and failed to penalize him in time. But that decision ignited debate about favoritism and whether the same leniency would have been granted to any other player. For years, Tiger had built a reputation as the ultimate rule, someone who would call penalties on himself without hesitation. So this moment felt symbolic, not because it proved dishonesty, but because it cracked the image of flawless discipline that had defined him. The issue wasn't whether the ruling could be justified within the rulebook. It was that the myth of Tiger as the sport's moral constant suddenly felt human, complicated, and open to scrutiny. In the days that followed, Tiger took full responsibility, and that might be the most telling part of the entire saga. He didn't lash out at Augusta, didn't hide behind the committee's ruling, didn't deflect to confusion in the moment. He admitted he made a mistake, plain and simple, but that honesty couldn't undo what the moment represented. It exposed him as human, fallible, capable of a surprisingly careless lapse under immense pressure, and it forced fans to confront a question that lingered far longer than the tournament itself. If Tiger Woods could miscalculate something so basic, what else was beginning to slip? From there, the Masters stopped being about contention and became about containment. The 2-stroke penalty effectively erased his momentum, and every shot afterward felt like it carried the weight of a courtroom verdict rather than a championship charge. Cameras followed him differently. Commentary shifted tone. The aura of inevitability that once surrounded him was replaced with scrutiny. The irony cut deep. This was the same Tiger who had built his legend on discipline, precision, and almost obsessive adherence to the rules. Now undone not by a wild swing or brutal conditions, but by overthinking a drop and explaining it too candidly. The debate over whether Augusta protected him still echoes. But nearly everyone agrees he never should have been in that position to begin with. This wasn't a rookie misunderstanding the rulebook. This was a seasoned champion who knew better, and that's why the moment endures. It marked a subtle shift in how his late career was perceived, not just injuries, not just physical decline, but tiny mental cracks where once there had been steel. Coaches still reference it as proof that pressure spares no one. Analysts still cite it when discussing focus and competitive edge. Because if Tiger Woods can slip at Augusta, then perfection in golf is a myth. He didn't lose that Masters because he lacked the skill to win. He lost it because, for one rare and very public moment, he trusted his instinct over the letter of the rulebook and paid the price in reputation, momentum, and mythology. He explained his reasoning and accepted responsibility. But the sting never faded because golf is ruthless about its margins and indifferent to reputation. Tiger's stature only made the fall feel heavier, as the most disciplined player of his era was undone by a small decision and a few candid words at Augusta, losing not his legacy but the illusion of perfection in a sport that never forgets. Years later, the moment still lingers as proof that even greatness can outthink itself under pressure. And now, in a different kind of storm, Jon Rahm faces his own defining crossroads after moving to LIV Golf and refusing to pay the DP World Tour fines for playing conflicting events, without release a standoff that isn't about paperwork, but power, allegiance, and control over Ryder Cup eligibility. While the Tour enforces its rules, and Rahm stands firm, the stakes stretch beyond money into legacy, because although appeals once delayed suspensions and allowed him and Tyrrell Hatton to compete at Bethpage, delays are not resolutions. And with the cycle moving forward, the financial and reputational bill is coming due in a sport where institutions, like rules at Augusta, rarely blink. The situation grew even more tangled when the DP World Tours outright rejected LIV Golf's reported offer to cover the players' fines collectively, sending a blunt message that this was never just about settling a bill, but about authority and precedent. By turning down the money, the Tour signaled it wanted accountability, not a bailout, reinforcing the idea that membership comes with obligations you can't simply sidestep when a rival league calls. Smiley Kaufman summed up the frustration shared by many when he said there are rules. And if you're a member of a tour, you can't just join a competitor without consequences. That sentiment captures how deeply LIV's arrival has fractured professional golf, splitting locker rooms, straining friendships, and now placing Ryder Cup unity under strain. For the DP World Tour, enforcement is about survival and relevance in a shifting power landscape. For Jon Rahm, it's about autonomy and self-determination. When Rahm brushed off the mounting fines with a casual remark that he had completely forgotten about it, the comment felt light on the surface but heavy underneath. It wasn't ignorance. It was indifference, a signal that the pressure tactics weren't landing. Combined with the Tour's refusal to accept LIV's collective payment, the standoff hardened into something bigger than money. The Tour insists Rahm must personally settle the fines to protect his membership and Ryder Cup eligibility. While Rahm's posture suggests he won't concede on principle, what remains is a collision of pride, politics, and modern sports economics. A superstar empowered by unprecedented financial freedom, refusing to acknowledge an authority he views as restrictive, and an institution determined to prove that even the biggest names are still bound by its rules. This collision cuts straight to the heart of golf's old guard versus its new power structure. The PGA Tour and DP World Tour were built on a membership model that trades loyalty and exclusivity for access to history, ranking pathways, and legacy-defining stages. Rahm's stance challenges that foundation, and the DP World Tour's refusal to accept LIV's money makes their position crystal clear. This isn't a billing dispute, it's about control. They're drawing a line to slow the talent drain and protect the authority that keeps their ecosystem intact. And the Ryder Cup sits right in the blast zone. If Rahm loses his membership under current rules, he's ineligible for the 2027 Ryder Cup at Adair Manor, a scenario that would shake Team Europe to its core. Rahm isn't just a name on a team sheet. He's a leader, a momentum shifter, a player whose fire in Rome helped define the event. A Ryder Cup without him wouldn't just weaken Europe competitively. It would spark uncomfortable questions about whether the event still truly represents the best of Europe versus the best of America. If elite players are sidelined by tour politics, fans, sponsors, and organizers are now stuck weighing tradition against competitive purity. As 2027 approaches, pressure on the DP World Tour will intensify, but for now they're holding firm. Meanwhile, Rahm stepping away for 4 months after a winless season despite piling up top 10 finishes feels both reflective and strategic. It cools the temperature publicly while quietly increasing leverage. The Tour loses one of its biggest stars during that stretch. Now the standoff becomes psychological as much as procedural. Who blinks first? Does Rahm decide his Ryder Cup legacy is worth the fines and the symbolic concession? Or does the DP World Tour eventually soften under commercial and competitive pressure? With Adair Manor on the horizon, the stakes stretch far beyond one player's bank account. Rahm's decision could redefine not only his legacy, but the balance of power between traditional tours and LIV for years to come.